Welcome, inquisitive souls. I am your host, Cyan, and this is the Age of Alchemy podcast. Episode 6 is called The Inner Child. Since it is so likely that children will meet cruel enemies, let them at least have heard of brave knights and heroic courage. C.S. Lewis. A child is akin to a dancing flame. When they are permitted to be in nature with their innocence, the darkness recedes, and the mundane world isn't even a thought. They are the harbingers of play and wonder in a realm often stripped of such virtues, reminding us of the fundamental truths that lie beneath the surface of our daily lives. Through their innocence and joy, we are beckoned to a higher understanding of the beauty and potential inherent in the human soul. When time is but an illusion and a small child endowed with an immense spirit moves through the home with boundless energy and unfiltered joy, pausing to marvel at the birds outside the window. Such a child possesses a natural affinity for life. They exist wholly in the present moment, seeing only the intricate veins in a leaf, hearing only the distant chime of the ice cream truck, and feeling nothing but anticipation for what's to come next, but with excitement. Life, in its ceaseless flow, offers them one wonder after another, and in their big little hearts, they embrace it fully, teaching us the value of living in the now. C.S. Lewis's quote can be interpreted as advocating for the moral and imaginative education of children through the use of inspiring stories. This approach serves multiple critical functions that are essential for both personal and societal well-being. By introducing children to stories of brave knights and heroic courage, we equip them with mental models for facing adversity. These narratives provide them with examples of how to confront and overcome obstacles, fostering resilience and a proactive mindset. Knowing that others have faced similar or greater challenges and emerged victorious can be incredibly empowering. This prepares children not just to survive, but to thrive in the face of what seems impossible. As you can tell, it has been months since I have published another episode to this podcast. I have started and restarted this episode multiple times, struggling with setting aside time, finding inspiration, and having an inner dialogue with my younger self to pull insight from. Quite frankly, the connection I have to my inner child and what her needs are is sometimes a challenge. But for many reasons, it's extremely personal, heartbreaking, and confusing to make a real-time connection with the past version of yourself who is almost a stranger at this point, and then to broadcast that to the world. But it got me thinking of what my real intention was: to unburden myself of wounds from the cruel enemies Lewis mentions, to prove to others how far I've come, to fill my head with more and more rumination that is honestly taxing. To simply put it, I had to put my ego in check, do some inner work as the creation of this episode was underway, and most importantly, to be real with my inner child. But in order to do so, I had to think like her again. What was it about the heroic courage that I latched onto in my darkest moments? And why was it only presented to me in fiction? This grew my appreciation for myths and stories tremendously and deepened my love for what is by no means fiction after all. For these stories are accurate reflections of the human existence. And children, in particular, are vessels of wisdom and wonder imbued with the boundless potential to weave these narratives into their evolving understanding of the world, infusing them with their own magic and innocence. With that being said, I chose to do away with going through my story in depth, simply because it's not simple. It seems that a lot of people who share their roots in this way have 1, 2, or maybe 3 recountings of occurrences that took place in their formative years that they can pivot to as transformative moments, good or bad. But for me, and I'm sure I'm not alone here, there's just too much bad. Too many occurrences, too many traumatizing moments to sift through, make sense of, or bring back into a context that my listeners can keep up with. Heck, I can barely keep up with it. What I'm trying to say is that the way in which I see the world today, some may say that me being in love with the complexities and wonder has a lot to do with the complexity and wonder that filled my forming brain in my adolescence. Perhaps it was a coping mechanism to be curious about so many things, but I can equally say that my earliest memory of being 1 year old, I felt this beating drum in the distance calling to me, a rhythm of arcane quality, asking me to partake in its song. So, one might assume that my quote-unquote non-conformity vibe I apparently give off so strongly is purely associated with not having a healthy structure in my childhood, thus feeling this need to question all narratives, authorities, or societal norms. But I can assure you that my inquisitive nature was and is preeminent. In fact, it is my belief that we all have this curious nature within us. And in contrast to the claim of where my questions stem from, I could also say that the majority of people I encounter have simply stopped giving a shit. And stopped because modernity's influence on their natural curiosities that could have arguably existed even before their conception. Inherent wit, resilience, awe, and creativity, often attributed to children, constitute essential aspects of our human essence. Yet, with the passage of time, these invaluable facets of our being diminish almost entirely. So was it taken from us? Was it gifted to us? Where did it vanish? Have you ever pondered of reclaiming your inner child to reignite that thrill? Do you, like me, find that this childlike vigor, or what remains of it, powers your creativity and the distinctive eccentricities of your unique blend of traits? If not, let's embark on this journey together, and if so, let's uncover it even more. Because where we are embarking, the hills, valleys, dragons, and magic, I ask you to look in the direction of adventure again, and perhaps you might just give a shit again. Because every story needs archetypes, and every person can in some way relate to them, our inner child was introduced to them through motifs passed down through the ages. Lessons were learned within each archetype or character, especially with the mentor. Joseph Campbell once said, "The role of the educator is to teach children to see the vitality in themselves." So the mentor archetype provides guidance and wisdom to the hero. The character is essential in helping the hero navigate their journey. In children's tales, mentors are often depicted as wise, old figures, such as Albus Dumbledore in Harry Potter. He offers Harry crucial advice and support, or Aslan in the Chronicles of Narnia, who gives the Pevensie siblings hope. Remember the child's gaze upon the mentor, a figure, shimmering, on the periphery of reality, where the tangible and the fantastical entwine. To a child's untrained eyes, the mentor is not merely a character, but a constellation of ethereal wisdom and cryptic guidance. They exist in the intersection between the known and the unknown, a repository of ancient truths cloaked in the familiar garb of a storybook guide. For the child, the mentor archetype is an embodiment of the celestial librarian, one who holds the keys to the vaults of universal knowledge. This figure appears as a spectral compass, guiding the hero through the corridors of their consciousness. Characters such as Dumbledore or Gandalf are not just wise elders. They are the echoes of cosmic harmonies, whispering secrets of the universe into the ears of the fledgling adventurer. In the child's fresh perspective, the mentor is a harbinger of transformative alchemy. They transmute the mundane into the magical, turning simple lessons into profound epiphanies. Which, need I remind you, you may need a little more of that since you're listening. Through their interactions, the child perceives a dance of shadows and light, where every piece of advice is a shard of a shattered mirror reflecting infinite possibilities. The mentor's presence is a promise of metamorphosis, a catalyst that ignites the latent spark within the hero's soul. The mentor in this abstract realm is also a bridge, spanning the chasm between the child's current reality and the vast expanse of their potential. They are the guardians of the threshold, beckoning to the child to step beyond the veil of the ordinary and embrace the extraordinary. The mentor's words are incantations, their gestures are sigils, and their very existence is a map to uncharted territories within the child's imagination. But who shall encounter such a being? Often, it is who the world least expects to acquaint with such holders of wisdom. Now imagine the orphan archetype through the lens of a child, where its presence is both a poignant symbol and a potent narrative. The orphan, often depicted as a literal figure bereaved of parents, transcends the simplistic interpretation to embody the essence of those who feel alone, alienated, or cast out by society. In the vastness of children's literature and film, the orphan archetype manifests as a character navigating a world that seems indifferent to their plight. This figure, seen in classics like Cinderella or Harry Potter, represents much more than just a child without parents. They symbolize the universal experience of isolation and the quest for belonging. To the child reader or viewer, the orphan's story is a journey and a reflection of their own fears and hopes, a mirror in which they can see their own struggles and resilience. The depiction of orphans in stories serves as a dual purpose. On one hand, it dramatizes the vulnerability and courage required to face life's adversities without the safety net of familial support. But on the other hand, it underscores a broader metaphor for anyone who feels marginalized. The orphan's narrative arc is often one of transformation, where initial abandonment and hardship give way to empowerment and self-discovery. This journey resonates deeply with those who feel like outcasts, offering a sense of hope and validation. Films and books employ the orphan archetype not just for its dramatic potential, but because it also taps into the reservoir of the inner child who feels alone. Characters like Anne Shirley in Anne of Green Gables or Oliver Twist navigate a society that often overlooks or misunderstands them. Their stories echo the sentiment of many who feel disconnected or misunderstood in real life. The orphan's resilience and ability to carve out a place for themselves amidst the adversity provide a powerful motif of triumph over alienation. Furthermore, the orphan archetype in stories highlights the innate human desire for connection and belonging. Despite their initial solitude, these characters often find or create new families and communities, illustrating that belonging is not solely defined by blood relations, but by the bonds we forge with others. This broader representation of the orphan as an outcast resonates with audiences of all ages, but more often is initially introduced in our younger years. Later, reminding us that while we may begin our journeys in isolation, we are always capable of finding or creating our own place in the world, and by doing so, building bonds and forming the connections we once longed for. In essence, the orphan archetype, whether depicted in film, literature, or folklore, is a symbol of the outcast. It remarkably encapsulates the struggles of those who feel alone and the universal quest for acceptance and identity. Through the eyes of a child, the orphan is not just a character in a story, but a beacon of hope and resilience, illustrating that even in the depths of isolation, the potential for belonging and transformation is always within reach. And speaking of transformation, the orphan archetype often evolves into the explorer, or has suppressed traits prior to departing into the unknown. As these characters, driven by their initial isolation, embark on a quest that lead them to discover new worlds and facets of themselves. This transformation from orphan to explorer underscores a journey from abandonment to self-improvement. Here's a few notable examples of this. One of my favorite characters who makes this transformation is Lyra in His Dark Materials. It is the quintessential portrayal of the transformation from orphan to explorer, symbolizing the quest for identity and belonging. Raised in the sheltered confines of Jordan College, Lyra starts as an orphan disconnected from her true origins. Driven by a profound sense of isolation, her discovery of dust and her subsequent adventures propel her into an expansive, multifaceted world, guiding her through profound metaphysical explorations. With the alethiometer as her compass, only she has the ability to decipher. She navigates through the various realms and encounters complex moral dilemmas, evolving from a naive girl into a wise and courageous woman. This journey highlights her resilience and insatiable curiosity, reflecting the universal struggle of overcoming alienation and finding one's place in the world. Lyra's transformation resonates deeply, illustrating that the path from isolation to empowerment is to fulfill a prophecy she was destined to consummate. In the intricate dance of human development, myths and stories hold a profound place, particularly in the formation of young minds. The tales of heroic courage serve as a luminous beacon, guiding children through the labyrinth of their experiences. This process is beautifully encapsulated in Carl Jung's concept of the archetypes, where the hero's journey becomes a template for personal growth and self-discovery. As I mentioned previously, my initial intention with this episode was to get some things off of my chest when it came to a lot of pain that often overshadowed some of my childhood. But the more I wrote for this episode, the more I realized what I really needed to be focused on. I read C.S. Lewis's quote and was thankfully reminded of the heroes and stories that kept me going. The inner child is simply the little you, experiencing everything for the first time. And in that time, we're more vulnerable. If your childhood casts a dark shadow like mine, my heart goes out to you. Watching our heroes almost give up, and watching them stand anyways, even when their legs were weak. Despite adversity, despite pain, despite the villain's attempt to distract you from your power. I also speak to myself when I say this. Realize that what's done is done. Your past can only hurt you as much as you allow it, and what remains is hope. Hope that you will forge a new path, form bonds, and create new realities. You owe it to your inner child. You owe it to them to be a brave knight. And just as Tolkien always put it beautifully, when the sun sets, look to the east. Thank you all so much for listening to today's episode. Stay tuned for episode 7, called The Voyage. I love you all. God bless.